Well, good morning and welcome back to our study of Proverbs. Who would have thought when we started this study 11 weeks ago that we'd still be meeting online instead of our classrooms this late in the summer? It's a crazy time we're living in, that's for sure. But nevertheless, here we are, and we're in the last lesson from Proverbs today. And I want us to finish strong as we dive into what is probably one of the most widely known chapters of all the Proverbs, Proverbs 31. There are some people throughout history that just seem to be larger than life. Either they have big personalities that just win people over, or maybe they just demand respect by the way they carry themselves and the way they behave. Larger than life personalities can look different, but one consistent thing about them is that they tend to hover over the rest of us, serving as inspiration in some form or another. They can be imposing figures that hold us in awe of their presence, or they can cast a shadow that we just can't seem to escape. They can inspire people to become more than they ever thought imaginable, giving us something to aim for as we make our way through life. Many times they become a standard that we're all trying to reach. They are the bar setters, the ones who determine what greatness looks like. One word used to describe these types of people is influencers. They are the ones who seem to set the tone for the rest of us. Maybe you're familiar with these types of people. The ones who walk in a room and the temperature just seems to change. Every eye lands on them and it feels impossible to tear your eyes away from them. They control the behaviors of others without ever lifting a finger. When I was about 13 years old, my dad took me to the Masters golf tournament in Augusta, Georgia, and I was just mesmerized by the whole experience. Everywhere I looked, all across the grounds, I saw PGA Tour players that I watched on TV every single weekend. Many of them were my heroes at the time. But they all seemed to pale in comparison to one golfer that I saw that day. As we were walking from one side of the property to the other, we passed by the players' parking lot, and as we were about halfway through the parking lot, a door to the clubhouse opened, and a man stepped out, silver hair, crisp gray slacks, a red V-neck sweater. He looked like royalty as he made his way to his convertible Cadillac that was waiting for him in the parking lot. I had heard stories about Arnold Palmer all my life, but they were nothing compared to seeing him with my own two eyes. If you don't know Arnold Palmer, he was affectionately referred to as the King. He was a good-looking guy, strong guy, a man's man, as we would say. He had one of those smiles that pulled you in and made you feel like you belonged in his presence, even though you knew you really didn't. His engaging personality was the reason why golf went from a sleepy, privileged sport that very few people knew much about to a mainstream event that was televised every weekend on American television. He revolutionized the sport in the 1950s and 60s. He created the buzz. He moved the needle, as we like to say. It was because of him that other golfers became household names in the years that followed his burst onto the scene. And there he was, in that moment, standing in front of me in absolute control of the moment. Within seconds, another dozen or so people spotted him and came and kind of gathered around and made their way over, but he remained cool and calm the whole time, signing autographs and saying hello to every single one of us. He was kind and warm and certainly larger than life. He set the standard. He was different. Some people just have that it factor, as we call it, right? Arnold Palmer had it. And I believe King Solomon, the one responsible for all the Proverbs that we've read up until this point, I believe he had it too. So it's no surprise that we would be introduced to another awe-inspiring character here in chapter 31 of his book as we close out today. Now, this chapter, we're told, was written by a man named King Lemuel, whom we know very little about. We don't know if this was actually Solomon just using a pen name or if this was actually a real-life king from a foreign land who just decided to chime in on what Solomon had been writing about. But regardless of that, this chapter, chapter 31, summarizes perfectly what we've been reading for the last 10 weeks. Chapter 31 continues seamlessly with the life lessons that Solomon had been writing to his son throughout the book. And as you remember, Solomon has used a female character to personify wisdom throughout the Proverbs. And he has encouraged his son to find a woman like her. She is the standard. She is the ultimate life partner. And now we come to the end of the book, and what better way to finish it out than by looking at this larger-than-life character that we can read about today. A character known as the virtuous woman, or as we may call her today, the Proverbs 31 woman. Pastor Ray Ortlund says, she is the role model, the ideal woman. Writer Alan Ross says, she is a symbol of wisdom, the strongest contrast to the adulterous woman that we discussed in earlier chapters. For generations, she has been the standard bearer. She has been everything a woman should be from A to Z. But contrary to many larger-than-life personalities that we find around us and in our world today, she is not put up on this pedestal because of her own abilities or her own attributes, as great as they are. But she's put there because of her loyalty, her undying faith and obedience to God. That's what makes her special. So as we make our way through this chapter today, I want you to read it as if she is the one who has taken all of the before mentioned Proverbs and put them into real life practice. She's taken all of the wise counsel, all of that godly advice, and actually tried to live it out. This is the woman every female should strive to be, and the woman that every male should strive to associate with. She sets the standard, not just for women, but for men as well. She isn't a real person, just a literary character, but she gives us all something that we can shoot for in life. So let's take a look at her together. Chapter 31, let's be introduced to the virtuous woman, and we'll learn about her today. So let's start, chapter 31, starting in verse 10. Would you follow along with me as I read it? Verse 10, a wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So, in these verses, it's clear from the very beginning what type of person this woman really is. The writer starts out by saying that she is priceless. She is a treasure to go in search of. He emphasizes how important having a woman like this is in our lives. And he gives us two reasons why she's so badly needed. The first reason he gives us that she's so important is because of her virtue or her character. She has very high standards, and she doesn't allow herself to be manipulated by the unsavory things or people of this world. She's capable of much and strives for excellence in everything that she does. She is a treasure, especially to her husband, and that's why she is said to be worth more than all those precious jewels. Can she be found? Yes, she can, but unfortunately, she is few and far between. The second reason we're given for her importance is that she's just simply valuable. Her husband trusts her with his life. He has no reason to question her or doubt her. She speaks well of him and never tears him down, especially not in public. She works hard from sunup to sundown, and she cares for her family well. Like a merchant ship which brings goods from all over to the people, she goes to great lengths to provide for her husband and her children. She refuses to settle. She puts their needs above her own and thoughtfully considers how her actions will impact all of them. There is no selfishness to be found in her. And all of these things make her valuable in the eyes of her family. A good wife and mother is worth more than any material thing that we could ever find. So these verses show us her value to her family in a physical way. But as we move on in this proverb, we see a different perspective of her value. In verses 23 through 27, we see that what a woman of honor provides for her family from a more social and emotional perspective. Her virtue impacts the lives of those around her in many different ways. Let's read about those. Pick back up in verse 23 and let's read there. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. You know, what we read here is the type of community influence a woman like this can have. Because of her own lifestyle, her husband gains the respect of the men around him. We've all heard it said before that behind every great man is a great woman. And the writer of this proverb echoes that opinion right here. Now, this doesn't imply that she is somehow below her husband, but instead it suggests that she stands behind her husband, encouraging him and pushing him on to do what he has been called to do. I know that's always been true in my marriage. My Proverbs 31 wife has always been my biggest encourager. And whenever the two of us counsel young couples who are soon to be married, I know she tells every one of those young women that they should too become their husband or future husband's biggest cheerleader. And that's exactly what the Proverbs 31 woman is, her husband's cheerleader. The reason the virtuous woman's husband had a seat among the elders at the city gate had much to do with her own spotless reputation. If there's one thing history has proven, it's that a careless husband or a careless wife can destroy the promise of their spouse. So in order to gather at the city gate, which would have been a place where men would have gathered to discuss different community affairs and legal issues and business matters, he needed a wife of impeccable character. It was as if her reputation actually preceded him. So the virtuous woman lives a life her family can be proud of, and sometimes this means she simply knew how to control her own tongue. One Bible commentator said this about her: she is appropriate in her speech. Words of wisdom and cascades of kindness flow from her mouth. She knows the nuclear power of words, and she uses hers well. Wise and gracious, she is blessed with common sense and a carefully guarded tongue. You see, the wisdom that Solomon has been talking about now throughout the entire book is being lived out in her life. She knows the damage her choices can do to her family, so she decides to make wise choices. I've read that she plays the role of a billboard, simply promoting her own family, her husband and her children, for all to see. She cares for them, provides for them, builds them up, never tears them down. And for that, she is honored. She is held in the highest esteem. And we can see that where we pick back up here in verse 28. Look there with me. Verse 28 starts, her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. So, there it is. After 31 chapters now, we see one of the main benefits of living the wise and obedient life that Solomon has talked to us about. That love and adoration of the people that are the closest to you. That's one of the benefits. That's what you earn by living this way. You know, the title of today's lesson is Finding Honor. And what I think the Proverbs 31 woman proves is that honor is usually found by those who aren't in search of it. It's those who serve faithfully, not for their good, but for the good of those around them, and then ultimately to the glory of God. The Congressional Medal of Honor is awarded to members of the U.S. Armed Services for uncommon valor in combat against a hostile force. It is the highest and most prestigious military decoration given in our country in recognition of personal bravery. And since 1863, it has been given to just over 3,000 men and women, people like Thomas Custer and Theodore Roosevelt and Audie Murphy. And the interesting thing about those 3,000 soldiers is that they received the award not because of what they did for themselves, but because of what they did for those around them. They gave themselves humbly for the mission. They sacrificed and they served. They stood strong in the face of danger and continued to push forward despite the hardships that they faced. And to this day, these distinguished recipients of that award are the only military personnel that are still saluted even by higher ranking officers than themselves. It is a recognition of bravery. It's a recognition of service and sacrifice, just like Proverbs 31 is. For the past 2.5 months, we've looked at what the Christian life should look like, what pursuing the wisdom of God should look like in our lives, whether man or woman. And now we get to see it. A life deserving of honor because it is a life filled with service and devotion to other people. Solomon was desperately trying to lead his son down the path of wisdom that leads to a life that abides in Christ. He pointed out both the right way and the wrong way. And in this chapter, we see both the type of person his son should be and the type of person his son should associate with. So as we finish up our study today, let us be mindful of the example that's set before us. The example set by this larger-than-life figure known as the virtuous woman. She points us to Jesus with her every action. And no one can be like her unless they too are in a close personal relationship with the giver of all wisdom. The Proverbs 31 woman is not just any woman. She is a woman saved by the grace and mercy of God. The applause and praise of this world mean very little to her, but the applause and praise from her Father means everything. If there's one lesson we can all learn from this book, it is to walk closely with the Lord. Allow Him to direct our paths. Allow Him to influence our decisions, and then use our wisdom that we gain through knowing Christ to help benefit those around us. You know, what a wonderful way to end such a wonderful book, and what a wonderful example the virtuous woman sets for all of us. I hope you've enjoyed our journey through the Proverbs, and I encourage you to continue reading them on your own as well. We weren't able to touch on all of them in the last 11 weeks, so go back and study them for yourselves. You can read one chapter a day for 31 days. You'll have the whole book finished in a month. I can't think of a better way to spend your quiet time in the weeks ahead than to study in the Proverbs and trying to apply that God-given wisdom to your life. Maybe there's something else out there that you can learn that we haven't covered in the last several weeks. Take the time to study the Proverbs. It's wisdom that we all need for the everyday life. I look forward to being back with you next week as we take a brief look at another book from Solomon. This time it's going to be Song of Solomon, and we'll begin by looking at our relationships with each other and ultimately our relationship with God as well. I hope you'll join me for that next week. Until then, hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for this lesson. We thank you for the example that the virtuous woman sets for all of us. The example of what it looks like to truly abide in Christ, to seek you in everything that we do, in all of our decisions, in all of our behaviors, the way we live our lives. It's an example of wisdom, and only the wisdom that can be obtained by knowing you better than we already do. So Lord, I thank you for Solomon. I thank you for his wisdom and the words that he provided for us. Lord, I pray that for all of us who have studied this over the past 2.5 months, I pray that we can apply this to our lives and that we too can continue to live wise lives, lives that give you all the honor and glory lives that aren't concerned about spotlights or recognition, but just pleasing you and bringing you all the glory. Lord, we thank you for being here in our presence today. And Lord, I pray that everything that we said and done, everything that has been said and done has been pleasing unto you. And we ask this in your awesome and holy name. Amen.